इस दिन के इंतजार में दशकों से ये आंखें तरस गई आएगा ये तो विश्वास था अब जो तो यहाँ लौटा.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this special edition concluding the 100 hours of special coverage we have had in the build-up to the Grand Ram Temple inauguration. There come moments like today, very rarely in the timeline of a nation, when a historic wrong is set right after 500 years. Today, the 22nd of January 2024, marked one such moment in the civilizational journey of India, that is Bharat. The most important, the most revered, the holiest of holy gods in this country, Bhagwan Shri Ram, was returned to the place of his birth. The Prime Minister led the Pran Pratishtha for Ram Lalla, who is now Virajman in his holy abode. He will now rule over Ayodhya in all his resplendent glory. But, and this is a message that the Prime Minister spoke about in his speech right after the Pran Pratishtha, that this is a moment for unity, not a moment for division. Ram is not a dispute. Ram is the resolution. How does one take the spirit of Ram, which was imbibed throughout Ayodhya and throughout this nation today? How does one take the embodiment of Ram and the spirit of Ram and use that to guard against this moment becoming some kind of a triumphalism? How does one protect both Dharma and Dhwaj? We will discuss that with a panel of international experts joining us from Australia, from the United States, and of course from Bharat. All of that through the course of this 1 hour special program here on CNN News 18. But first, the events of what is a momentous day and how it unfolded in one of the holiest sites in this country.
ये मंदिर मात्र एक देव मंदिर नहीं है, ये भारत की दृष्टि का, भारत के दर्शन का, भारत के दिग्दर्शन का मंदिर है. ये राम के रूप में राष्ट्र चेतना का मंदिर है. राम भारत की आस्था है, राम भारत का आधार है, राम भारत का विचार है, राम भारत का विधान है, राम भारत की चेतना है, राम भारत का चिंतन है, राम भारत की प्रतिष्ठा है, राम भारत का प्रताप है, राम प्रवाह है, राम प्रभाव है, राम नेति भी है, राम नीति भी है, राम नित्यता भी है, राम निरंतरता भी है, राम विभु है, विशद है, राम व्यापक है, विश्व है, विश्वात्मा है. और इसलिए जब राम की प्रतिष्ठा होती है तो उसका प्रभाव वर्षों या शताब्दियों तक ही नहीं होता, उसका प्रभाव हजारों वर्षों के लिए होता है.
said at the start of the show, a full international panel will be joining us. Voices from Australia to America to, of course, India. Sarah L. Gates is a Hindu human rights activist from Australia. Sadhvi Bhagwati Saraswati is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation. Anand Neelakantan, author, joining us. Achut Gopi, artist, joining us from New York. And Walter Anderson, academic and author. And Dushyant Sridhar, Vedic scholar, will also be joining us. Sarah L. Gates, when you saw the pictures of the Pran Pratishtha and Bhagwan Shri Ram being rendered back to his rightful place, his abode, his birthplace, what did those pictures mean to you? What were the emotions that were going through you as someone who's been fighting for the rights of Hindus for a number of years now? Encapsulate for us what today's moment means.
Well, from a personal perspective, I just felt just incredible bhakti and devotion. And I think that other commentators have been able to, I think, raise this point about the emotions and the feeling of unity that this has brought to the community, the Hindu community worldwide. And bhakti is that uniting power in the heart, which guides humanity forward into that direction which Ram is going to lead us. And I think that's what Modi ji was talking about when he said that it has an impact of 1,000 years. We're at a time now when science and spirituality are really coming together, and this awakening of consciousness. And, you know, with the innocence and the purity of this child, who's also a warrior for Dharma, like, it's just got all of the facets that I think are uplifting, inspiring, and will bring us together, because you can't help but love this divine being, and love is the uniting force. So that's my hope. That was my impression from the experience.
Sadhvi Bhagwati Saraswati, you know, one of the things that the Prime Minister said, and I'm sure this will now be studied, it'll of course, it's already gone viral, about how Ram is not igniting a fire, but he's an urja, he's an infusion of energy. Ram is not a dispute, but he is the resolution. How do those comments speak to what has been a contested, disputed history over the last 500 years, and this civilizational reclaiming and the rendering back of one of the holiest, most revered gods here in India back to his abode, back to his birthplace?
So it's been really interesting and so beautiful for me, because originally, of course, I come from America, come from Los Angeles, from Hollywood. By God's grace, I was brought to the Himalayas, to Rishikesh, to the banks of Mother Ganga, almost 30 years ago, and I've been living in Rishikesh since. And yet now, coincidentally, I happen to be in New York City at the time of this event. And last night, this morning, India time, I had the beautiful blessing of being in Times Square, surrounded by the Indian community, by the Hindu community of New York, of New Jersey, from so many places, gathering in Times Square together, celebrating this extraordinary event. And yes, for 500 years, we have waited. But what's so beautiful is the structure was destroyed 500 years ago, but the spirit of the people was never destroyed. That bhakti ki shakti, that devotion, that love, that piety has not only stayed strong, but has grown and has grown and has grown. And today, this inauguration is not only the inauguration of a Ram Mandir, it's the inauguration of a Rashtra Mandir. And this message of Bhagwan Ram is this message of our Bharatiya Sanskriti, which is the solution. It is the samadhan to all of that we're facing in the world. If you look at the life of Ram, the teachings of Ram, what are they about? They're about peace. They're about oneness. They're about togetherness. They're about justice. Look, Bhagwan Ram goes personally to Shabri. All of the rishis and the priests and the yogis, everybody's waiting for him. Everybody's so excited to see him. And of course, he blesses them. But he asks everybody, where is Shabri? And he goes personally to Shabri, this what we would call a lower woman, lower caste woman, lower fast woman. स्वयं चल के गए उनके पास. And it teaches us that to remove all of the Bhedbhav, to remove the borders and the boundaries. And if you look in his army, who does he bring in? All of the different animal species even. So it's not a matter of just embracing humans of different castes and colors and cultures and races and religions, but it's actually about embracing all.
Let me also get across
today.
to Anand Nilakantan, and Dushyant Sridhar is also joining us. Anand Nilakantan, I want to continue. This was the sort of concluding part of what the Prime Minister's speech was, where I read the first part before I went to the previous speaker, but he continued where he said, Ram is India's faith, India's foundation. Ram is the thought of India, the law of India. Ram is consciousness and contemplation. He's the prestige and the might of India. The fact that the Prime Minister also chose to emphasize this, and I think previous speakers also mentioned this, that this whole thing, the Ram Mandir today has been built upon a legal foundation, upon a unanimous judgment of a 5-judge bench, a constitutional bench of the Supreme Court of India. The Ram Mandir has not been established by brute majoritarianism. It's been established as per the law of this land. And it has been established peacefully, neither on the 9th of November 2019 when the verdict came out, nor today, the 22nd of January 2024, has there been any instance of major violence in this country. And I think that's a testimony to Ram and to the Ram Bhaks of this land.
Definitely, and I wish this legacy of Ram's Tyag is taken forward. Ram is famous for the grace he shows even in victory. Even after the Ram Ravan war, the grace he shows after the victory, he doesn't take even a grain of sand from Lanka. By right of conquest, it belonged to him, but he goes back. He is the one who had given up his kingdom for the Maryada of his father, for the word of his father. Let the spirit of Ram continue to unite us all, and let there be whatever had happened in the past. Now a legal resolution has been found not through violence, but through the law, but through the civilizational strength of this great country. Let us start rebuilding the society again. If at all any wounds are there, that has to be healed in the name of Ram, and let this be a new beginning in the civilizational journey of this country is what I wish for.
Dushyant Sridhar, the aspiration, and this is what Ram stood for, the aspiration for any nation state, any civilizational state is Ram Rajya, where everyone is treated as equal. Mahatma Gandhi talked about Ram Rajya. Today the Prime Minister talked about Ram Rajya. And yes, in the next 25 years, as we are hoping and aspiring to become Viksit Bharat, how does one ensure Ram Rajya as well? Because if that does not happen, and let's face it, it's not like our society, our country is not without its problems. Social inequities, there are all kinds of issues that need to be resolved. Unless that happens, you cannot say a true Ram Rajya has arrived. And the Prime Minister underlined that today in his speech. So how does one sort of transform this country into Ram Rajya as we look at Viksit Bharat over the next 25 years?
Namaskaram Zaka, and namaskaram to all my fellow panelists and to the viewers. Ramo Ramo Rama iti prajanam abhavan kathaha Rama bhut jagat bhut Rame rajyam prashasati. When the Yuddha Kandam after the Pattabhishekam concludes, this is how it concludes. So we have been speaking about Rama Rajya. Even Mahatma Gandhi has referenced to Rama Rajya on many occasions. But what is Rama Rajya? A blatant example is what we saw during the pandemic, Zaka. We are still not a developed nation. We are still a developing nation. We are an aspiring nation. We had 1.4 plus billion people to vaccinate, not once but twice. With such a population across communities, across different economic strata, across different geographic terrains, we did not even think twice where we said we will support the other countries as well in vaccines. People were wondering, when you can't vaccinate your own people first, why do you help others? Because that is Rama Rajya, that is there in our DNA. Unlike, in most of the airlines, they'll say first protect yourself and then protect the others. Probably that's not there in the DNA of Bharat. The magnanimity has always been with us, where we grow and we also let other nations grow. We don't put them into a false debt trap. All this is a part of Ramarajya. In Ayodhya Kandam, when Bharata comes and says, Rama, you have to get back to Ayodhya, it is called Kaschit Sargam. There are over 40 shlokas where Rama poses, Bharata, are you doing this for administration? Bharata, are you taxing these people so that they don't feel the strain? Bharata, are you giving welfare schemes to people? It's a beautiful sarga in the Valmiki Ramayana. That's a case study of how administration should be. That is Ramarajya. So you may ask, are we having Ramarajya today? We have had traces of Ramarajya all throughout. When Sri Lanka was suffering in the debt, we extended a credit line. Did we want to trap them in the debt and then make them our vassal? No. So this is a part of Ramarajya. The more we work on the Ramayana and our scriptures, and the more we trust and treasure our roots, the better the country will become, which we are already becoming.
I want to ask Sarah Gates, there have been instances worldwide as well. Hagia Sophia is the most notable example that comes to mind, which used to be a church, then became a mosque. And of course, that too had a violent history. It was not on the back of a court order that it got converted from a church to a mosque. What sort of example does Ayodhya now offer to the world? As we speak, we are seeing one of the bloodiest wars being waged between Israel and Hamas on the Gaza Strip. Again, some would say that this is a civilizational battle. What example can Bharat and the way in which the Ayodhya dispute was resolved, the Ayodhya question was resolved, the peaceful and legal manner in which it was resolved, what example does that offer to the rest of the world?
Okay, so I think that you've hit the nail on the head already with the point about the non-violence and, the systemic manner in which these, I guess, very deeply moral and ethical issues were dealt with by the court. And they did so, I think, in a very fair way from what I've read of the verdict, which is 1,045 pages. So I was reading through that, and I did notice that they were tested. They were, if the court found that they didn't have the evidence to prove that was the birthplace of Lord Ram, then they weren't going to get their title. And it took a lot of pressure and it took a lot of research. They had to apply their Gyan Yoga as well as their Karma Yoga. So all of these aspects of yoga did come into this. But I think one of the most interesting points that has been picked up by other Indigenous communities around the world from that legal that legal case is this idea of juridical personhood. And we've seen that working here with giving rights to non-human persons, rights to rivers. And with Indigenous systems, we've seen that the landforms are persons, and that the ancestral spirits might be living in these landforms. And there's a whole lot of stories that are embedded within the land and within the life forms of the land. And they have intimate connection with human beings. So the very idea that there was, a deity and the birthplace of the deity, it was the place of the deity that also had personhood. I think that this is a precedent which other Indigenous communities can take up and should definitely take up, if you don't mind me saying. Mm-hmm.
Sadhvi Bhagwati Saraswati, I think I want to take that point that Sarah Gates made. Whether it is in America with the Native Americans, the Native Indian Americans who were there, or whether it is in Australia with the Aborigines, there are numerous examples where the natives of the land, their assets, their pride has been taken away because of conquest and colonization. And that happened in Bharat as well, not just under colonization, but even the conquest before that. But restorative justice in a peaceful manner through an order of the court in a democratic manner, a historic wrong that happened 500 years ago got corrected today. Today, of course, was the pinnacle moment of that, but it's a process that began 30 years ago. Again, I come back to that point about how, whether it is in the West, in Australia, America, in many other countries, what example does this offer for similar, indigenous rights, indigenous peoples, assets and fates that have been overcome because of power, because of history?
It's a beautiful question. And for me, growing up here in America, we have the holiday every year of Thanksgiving. And, when we're very young in school, we're taught that this is this great holiday. And yet, as you get just a little bit older, what you realize is this isn't actually a cause of celebration. What this is a day that is marking the way that the invaders into this land that we call America actually conquered through such incredible violence the native people who were living here and took qabza of their land and then had the audacity to call it a celebration and to give thanks for it. And what we're seeing in both the story of Bhagwan Ram's life, it was mentioned by another speaker earlier how after conquering Ravan, Bhagwan Ram did not take anything from Lanka. I mean, a city made of gold. He could have established himself as the head of this entire gold-filled land, but he didn't take anything. Not anything. He put Ravan's brother in charge, and he came back. From that example to the example of our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, and the way that he, with such righteousness, such commitment, such steadfast dedication, such anchoring and grounding in truth and in patience, but a patience that is strong, not a patience that is weak, and a patience that is clear with vision, knowing exactly where we're going, not a patience that is a doormat. Okay. A lot of people think that spirituality means that you become a doormat, and it does not at all. Spirituality is strong. And what Modi ji showed us was how to have total faith, total surrender in the judicial system, in the courts, while simultaneously having complete faith in the truth and the strength of the vision to make sure that that truth prevails. And I would love to see the indigenous people of the United States, of Canada, of Central America, of South America, of other parts of the world have leadership with that kind of dedication, devotion, strength, and power to actually bring about the beginning of a restoration of that which was stolen from us.
Anand Nilakanthan, I absolutely agree with the points that all our speakers have made, and particularly on the question of restorative justice. I can't think of a better example than Ayodhya and the manner in which it's been resolved legally, peacefully. But at the same time, and I think the Prime Minister alluded to this in his speech as well, how do you protect this moment from becoming some kind of a triumphalism moment that, one set of people have, vanquished the other set of people? Because at the end of the day, yes, the colonization, these conquests happened hundreds of years ago, but we are living in the present day. And our country is an amalgamation of different kinds of people, different followers of different faiths. How do you ensure that this moment is also symbolizing what Ram stood for, which is decency, which is peace, which is dharma, and not make it as the supremacy or the succession of one group of people over another?
As Honorable Prime Minister had correctly pointed out, this should not become a retributive justice. We have an example about this much before also, how Somanath was restored at the initiative of Sardar Patel and later K.M. Munshi, how it was restored and how peacefully it was done. We have a great example of that. Here what we have to understand is we have to have the grace in the victory of the legal process. Also, we should have the respect to the side which had lost the legal battle and accepted it gracefully without taking it to the streets and bringing violence, that shows the strength of Indian constitution, and we should have the large-heartedness to understand how broad-heartedly and how the other side has accepted the verdict of the court. The person who had gone against, who had fought the legal battle, he was also involved in the Pran Pratishtha of the temple. He was also a part of the entire thing. That is the beauty of India, and I think that spirit should always continue. The mutual respect should be always there, and that is what Ram also stood for. That just like how we see after he vanquishing Ravan, he shows great respect to Lanka and to Ravan itself, and asks Lakshman to learn from Ravan. For whatever his faults, he was also a great scholar and the great Bhakta of Shiva. So the same kind of grace which Ram exhibits in his victory, here also in the name of Ram, the great temple is being made. It's a historic moment for us. We should have the same grace and the respect to the side which took the legal battle, and legally they lost it, and still they accepted it without any violence or taking to the streets, like how the civilians they are, they respected. The same way, the side which waited, the Hindu side which waited for the court to give the orders instead of rushing into it. So this is the way to solve the problems, and we are set example. I hope it should not deteriorate to triumphalism, and it will continue with the same grace.
Yeah, in fact, I think one of the guests in one of the previous shows pointed out that the land that's been allocated to the Muslim side to build a masjid in Ayodhya, construction of course is happening there. I believe, according to this particular guest who was there yesterday on the show, that 40% of the donations that have come to build the masjid have come from non-Muslims. And I think that in itself is a testimony to the peaceful nature in which this decades-long conflict has been resolved, like I said, through legal means, through a peaceful means. Walter Anderson, author and academic and somebody who's written extensively on the RSS, is also joining us. This entire struggle to try and restore Ram to his birthplace, to take him back to his abode in all his resplendent glory, as was seen today in the Pran Pratishtha, which I'm sure you also watched, Mr. Anderson. This entire struggle was framed in India as, oh, here are a bunch of guys who are non-secular, who are triumphalists, who are majoritarian, and in their world view of the country and of this nation, only one religion is supreme to everything else. That was the way it was framed, politically at least. Forget about the legal framing, but politically, that was how it was framed. After today's events and after what the Prime Minister said and what the RSS chief said, do you think that that framing has been completely shattered? And today, as the PM said, this is the Hindu way of life. You have restored the holiest of holy gods back to his abode, and at the same time, this will not become a moment of, one side is one over the other, or one side is more majoritarian than the other. This is as the PM said, Ram is not igniting a fire, he's infusing energy. Ram is not a dispute, he is the resolution.
Yeah, can I say something about that? There are a couple things. I've been following the RSS commentary on this event, and what strikes me is an effort to play down the triumphalism. In fact, specific orders have gone out, as I understand, not to do that. And part of that is there's almost no mention in RSO circles anymore of the construction, the alleged construction of a mosque on top of the Ram temple in the 16th century. I haven't heard anybody in the RSS recently mention that, and I don't think you're going to. And I think partly it's because orders have come down not to, but that it gets in the way of the major message of this dedication, and maybe Ram himself. And that is, it has kind of all India inclusive, and there's a real effort has been made to make this whole effort as inclusive as possible. Now, there weren't Muslim imams involved in the actual ceremony, but there were invited Muslims to the ceremony.
Yeah.
And in fact, to a certain extent, there was even some participation of Muslims in the ceremony. And as I said, there were, quite a few invited guests, and they came. And the Muslim response, I think, has been interesting. It's been a muted response. They've accepted the verdict as the legal verdict of the government of India. That doesn't mean they're enthusiastic, but I think they're willing to go along. And I think that at least the RSS response the official response is, yes, we need to get along. We need an inclusiveness. But there's one other thing I think that's interesting about all of this is a greater self-confidence that you have in India. And Bhanu Pratap Mehta, as many of you know who he is, has written recently that this was a watershed event. And partly it was a watershed event because of the greatest self-confidence in India. And it's remarkable for those who have followed India for many years as I have. In fact, my wife is an Indian who's there right now. Is that it's really remarkable that the Indians have a greater self-confidence in both their economy, which has been doing quite well.
Yeah.
And in fact, the Indian stock market is among the best in Asia. I just read an article in the Wall Street Journal that if you're going to invest money, the Indian stock market is a good place to do so. Now they need to do more, in terms of infrastructure and other things. But there is a so significant sense among Indians and among business people that the future is an optimistic one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's all played into all of this. That as I watched the ceremony, the kind of joy that you saw in people's face was really quite remarkable.
Yeah. I agree with you because, I said this before you joined the broadcast as well. I think it's incredible and it speaks to the administration, not just that of the central government, but various state governments as well, that neither in November of 2019, when the Supreme Court verdict came, nor today, the 22nd of January, have we seen any instance of major violence. Yes, there is some politics going on. Obviously, politicians from different shades and hues, they will play politics. That's fine. But if you were to take a dipstick sort of sentiment barometer across this country, what we're seeing today is joy and nothing more than joy. And I think that is a point that needs to be underlined. And the fact that, like I said, no major instance of violence has happened either today or on the day of the verdict. Achyut Gopi is also joining us. Of course, viewers of CNN News 18 are accustomed to the work that's been put forth by Achyut Gopi. Thank you very much. I want to first ask you, for people like you, when you were seeing the ceremony itself, of course, there were mantras, there were rituals, there was a lot happening, but one constant thing which I also noticed was music. There were various Ram bhajans that were being sung. What was your sense of what you saw? And can you, for our viewers, oblige us with what was your favorite Ram bhajan through the Pran Pratishtha ceremony that you saw today?
Thank you so much for having me, firstly. It is an absolute pleasure and honor. It feels as though this for me was not just one moment in history. This felt like culmination of a life of devotion. So for me, I was born and raised within a bhakti yoga tradition that centers itself on devotion and spirituality. And so I have been singing for God in this way since the moment that I was born. So for me to see a moment where everyone in the world kind of was focusing its eye on such a spiritually charged practice, watching the Pran Pratishtha of a deity is something that is for many, many, many people rarely ever seen.
Yeah.
I have seen many instances of deity installations within my life, but this was such an incredible moment to witness not just, like I said, a nation, but the entire world. And of course, what bhajan could be sweeter than Shri Ramachandra Kripalu Bhajamana? Watching them play such beautiful, beautiful bhajans that many, many people have heard throughout their families through growing up. These bhajans have been passed down through generations. This devotional music shapes the lives of people. It boosts our faith, gives us hope in dark times. And this world is always going through dark times, but so especially dark now. And I feel like the entire world needed this moment of auspiciousness.
A line
Shri
or two
Ram.
for us, please, if you could kindly oblige our viewers. Thank you.
Shri Ramachandra Kripal Bhajamana Harana Bhava Bhaya Darunam. And so Shri Ram is a giver of pleasure, and he gives freedom from fear. And so this bhajan even says that he is giving fearlessness to all. And so this was a moment that the entire world needed. We needed this auspiciousness. We needed to herald in a new time when all of us, hopefully, here on out, will be more focused on spiritualism and somehow or other uniting each other in such spiritual moments. We need more spiritual moments that bring everyone together, regardless of geography, regardless of social strata, regardless of anything and everything else.
Okay.
To have such a pointed goal is so beautiful.
I also want to go across to multiple-time Grammy Award winner Ricky Cage, who's also joining us. Ricky, when you were seeing and witnessing history in the making when the Pran Pratishtha happened, what was that moment like for you? Because there was so much devotion, there was mantras, rituals, there was so much music, bhajans being sung. It was almost like a spiritual energy had taken over not just Ayodhya, but large parts of this country. What was that moment like for you?
It is absolutely beautiful watching the entire ceremony, and of course there was a lot of joy in my household, especially because my father is over the age of 80 right now, and for the last pretty much 2 decades, he's been constantly talking about how that he felt that during his lifetime he's never going to be able to see the Ram temple being built. And I remember when it was announced that the date was going to be, today, when the inauguration was going to happen, he was absolutely overjoyed, and so was I. So this is the kind of joy that the country has felt, with this particular, historic moment that happened today. And of course, watching the Honorable Prime Minister going through all of the, rituals was an amazing moment, and his speech was absolutely beautiful. It was such an inspiring speech, which will go down in history as being one of the greatest speeches ever said. Pretty much at the same level, or even higher than the speeches by Martin Luther King, the speeches by Abraham Lincoln. It was such a beautiful, beautiful speech today.
Ricky, when you and I know you spend a lot of time traveling abroad in Europe, in the US. When you interact with your friends who are not of Indian origin or Indian descent, is there a greater understanding of where this country stands and what its history is, greater understanding of Ram, of Bhakti, of bhajans, or is it still looked at as this, exotic land? Yes, mysticism and spirituality, but not really a land that can offer practical, pragmatic leadership for today's problems, whether it is wars or climate change or whatever have you, the big problems facing our planet. Is the view on India and the view about India changing in the last few years?
Absolutely. The view in India is changing by leaps and bounds because, if you look at India as a country in general, India used to be a country that was always sitting on the sidelines. It was a country that was never participating in intergovernmental decisions. But now India is, India is not only participating in these large intergovernmental decisions and these large global decisions, but also taking leadership. And that trickles down to everything, to the arts, to spirituality, to a greater understanding of India. And right now, as you correctly mentioned, in the past, India was always looked upon as an ethnic country or an exotic country, and all of our, the understanding of India was always like, that's how it was. It was never mainstream. It was always exotic. But now that's slowly changing the view on India. There's a lot of curiosity and that trickles down even to artists like me. I mean, I feel a lot more respect for my art, which is Indian music, now than ever before. And it's just because India has gotten so much of visibility, and I guess even today was a huge step in that direction, where there's been there's been a return to our traditions, a return to our culture, return to who we are as Indians with the ceremony today.
Walter Anderson, when countries grow and become powers and superpowers, a large part of it is because of economic power, because of military power, and you can trace all of this. The British Empire, American exceptionalism, and now, of course, in the last 30 years or so, the rise of China. But there's also a moral argument that needs to be made. There has to be something morally persuasive about the story of a land, and India has that morally persuasive argument. Is that finding resonance, I'm curious to know, in London, in Berlin, in Washington, as to what is it that this country, this land, and its people, and its vision, and its culture can offer, which can help solve some of the world's problems? Today, the West is talking about mental health. Meditation has always been a part of our life. Is India being viewed from that prism by the West and through the West?
I think definitely, in my opinion.
Ricky, I'm sorry to interrupt. That question was to Walter Anderson. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say more than in the past, though knowledge of Hinduism is still relatively weak. And Hinduism is a complex thing, as all of you know and know better than I. And it's kind of many moving parts. And in the West, there's some understanding. The understanding of India in the West, to be quite frank, has more to do with its current economic and geostrategic strength than it does with its moral leadership. I think you're going to get more of that, though. And I think of the area of the world where India is located. It's located in a very dangerous area. You may have read just recently, Iran has attacked Baluch areas of Pakistan. Pakistan has attacked back, and then you have the whole Hamas-Israel. Then you have the problem with the Houthis in Yemen. India, in a sense, and I've read an article about this, which some of you may have seen in the Indian press, that India is in a position to play a role in resolution of that issue. It hasn't taken a firm stand on either, but it has called for a peaceful resolution. In the past, India would have been ignored. It was it has no strength. What can it do? Now it is a country that is booming economically. It is being wooed by the U.S. and others as well. And it is in a position to play a role. And I think and that's where I think the Hindu ethos plays a role. And when I mean the ethos, I don't necessarily mean in the metaphysical sense. In fact, some of the leaders of the Hindutva movement were in fact atheists. I think a lot of people don't recognize that Veer Savarkar was an atheist. And it was my own impression of looking at some of these people that many of them are not religious in the sense of metaphysical. And today, the event that we saw today, to bring it, to the event that we're talking about, it is a sense of joy. And I think for many of the people there, it was spiritual in the metaphysical sense, but it's more than that. And here I want to get back to quote, Bhanu Pratap Mehta, who I think is one of the most astute observers of Indian culture, is that it was a watershed, and a watershed, I think, that reflects, a greater self-confidence. And I think that greater self-confidence is interesting, not only in terms of the role that India can play in what I've just described, but also domestically. If you don't feel a victim, and increasingly Indians do not feel the victim anymore because the situation in many ways has been, very positive for them, the more likely you're to have peace.
Okay.
It's when you feel that you're the victim, that's dangerous, because then you strike out and you organize and you do things that are very negative. And in fact, in much of the past in India, you've had this negativity, both by Muslims toward Hindus and Hindus toward Muslims. I'd say you have less of that. And on the Muslim side, as I said, a very muted response to all of this. Okay. And a sense of being more inclusive. And the ceremony today, really had the notion of inclusivity that was, part of it, part of the ethos of that ceremony.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Walter Anderson, Ricky Cage, Anand Nilakantan, and of course the guests who joined us through the last hour. Thank you very much indeed. It has indeed been an epochal moment in the cultural reawakening of this nation. But as the Prime Minister said and other speakers said right after the Pran Pratishtha, this is not a moment of triumphalism. This is a moment of inclusivity. Ram is not a dispute. Ram is the resolution. We'll leave it at that. I'm going to take a quick break, but as we take that break, we've got more interviews that we're going to be playing out. I spoke to Kailash Satyarthi, India's Nobel Peace Laureate, and asked him what this moment means. I've also spoken to Cassandra, who is a German singer, a blind singer, and she is rendering some of her favorite Ram bhajans as the fervor of spirituality, of Ram, grips not just Ayodhya Nagari, not just Ram Nagari, but this land and its people of over 1 billion. All right, millions have watched the Pran Pratishtha of Bhagwan Shri Ram. Ram Lalla is now truly Virajman in his birthplace in Ayodhya, but there were a lucky few who got to witness that firsthand. And one of them is Kailash Satyarthi, Nobel Peace Laureate, who's now joining us. Thank you very much, Kailash ji, for joining us. You were there witnessing history as it unfolded. What did that moment mean when the Pran Pratishtha was complete and Ram Lalla became Virajman and you were witnessing that moment? What were the emotions going through your mind at that time?
Well, first thing which came to my mind is a sense of deeper moral responsibility. Because once we are able to reach to that height, it is important that how to live with that. As we know that Lord Ram is an epitome of highest moral values, highest ethos and nobility. If we are worshipping Ram, or if we pay our tribute, all devotees and all those who respect Ram has a deeper moral responsibility to not just talk about those values and the greatness of Rama, but also to live with that. And that means we have to live with compassion, we have to live with forgiveness, politeness, we have to live with all those things which Rama has fought for. We know that he struggled all the time against injustices, all the time against atrocities upon the poor people, the ordinary masses, and he has emerged as the savior of them through his compassionate leadership. So I was thinking that we all have to take a pledge that we have to live with those values of love and compassion.
This, of course, has been a long struggle for not just Ram Bhaks, but for Hindus across this country and Hindus around the world. The fact that it happened peacefully and it happened on the back of a Supreme Court Constitution bench judgment, what does that speak about this land, its people, and the way they have pursued this struggle to what has been its logical conclusion today, that Ram Lalla is back at his birthplace?
Well, it's a great moment, absolutely. But now, as I said, that our moral responsibility becomes higher and deeper than ever before. That everybody has to feel that this is a long-lasting peace, this is a long-lasting justice, this is a long-lasting harmony in the society, and that everybody has to keep. All Indians have to keep that harmony and peace if we celebrate this great moment.
I also want you to speak to fellow Indians who may not be Hindu in their beliefs or practices, whether it's the Muslims or the Christians or the Buddhists or the Jains or the Sikhs. How would you use this moment to unify all Indians? How can Ram become a symbol of unity and not a symbol of division? As the Prime Minister also said in his speech, Ram is a unifier, not a divider. He's not a dispute, but he's a resolution.
Absolutely. That is something which we have to take back our homes. When we talk of the son of Kaushalya and Dasrath, when we remember the husband of Sita, when we respect the eldest brother of all these Bharat, Lakshman and Shatrughan, when we are talking about the king of Ayodhya, it brings lot of inspiration, and the inspiration is oneness, harmony, love. As I said, inspiration is to fight hatred and divide. The inspiration is to make sure that how the humanity could be united, and that is something which Rama has always taught. Rama himself did not fight Ravan as the king or the prince of Ayodhya. He has been able to win over millions and millions of ordinary people, those who are living in jungles and mountains, and he has proven the leadership for them, and he has again evolved as a compassionate leader, and he has defeated the power troika of Ravan. Ravan was wealthy, Ravan was very learned person, Ravan was having a huge power, but he has proven, Rama has proven that how the very ordinary people of India, those who can rise above any differences and come together to fight out that kind of arrogance of any power. Okay. And that is something which everybody can learn from Rama's life.
All right, Kailash Satyarthi ji, thank you very much for joining us here on CNN News 18 with your thoughts on what is clearly an epochal day in the history of this civilization. What we make of it and what values we imbibe from this moment, that is entirely up to us. We have to rise to a higher moral standard, says Kailash Satyarthi. Joining me now is someone whose rendition of one of the Ram bhajans has gone viral. Cassandra May Spitman is a German singer and songwriter. Thank you very much, Cassandra, for speaking with us here on CNN News 18 on Brass Tacks. First things first, I'm sure you must have seen the visuals of the consecration ceremony, the Pran Pratishtha, the Ram Mandir rising once again, the Prime Minister leading that ceremony. When you were watching the live telecast, when you were watching those pictures, what were the emotions running through you? What were you feeling at that point of time?
Oh, so I can't even see the pictures because I'm blind, but I think from what I heard is that there were so many people, like the crowd was amazing and they were shouting, and it was this very big atmosphere full of energy, and of course you can also feel it without seeing it. So yeah, I would have loved to be there, like at this occasion at this temple, but I think I could already feel it also from here.
And during the entire Pran Pratishtha, the consecration, almost an hour-long ceremony, as I was saying, there were, of course, mantras and various rituals that were being performed, but throughout large parts of the ceremony, you could hear bhajans being sung, Ram bhajans being sung. I hope you got a chance to hear some of them. Again, would you describe for us, you know, the music, the underlying music through the entire ceremony and beyond, how that elevated the whole setting, elevated the whole moment itself?
So, yeah, I mean, whenever I hear Lord Ram bhajans, it's like just this bhakti coming straight at me, which I can feel, this devotion from the singers, coming from the singers themselves. Whenever I hear devotional bhajans, and yeah, so every bhajan has its uplifting moments and its emotionality, its nostalgia, and this is what I always love about bhajans being heard. And I think it's really important to always bring it to other levels and to different genres as well. So yes, I really love them all.
Could you, I know that last time you were here on the show and when you were speaking to Indian stations, some of your songs, some of your renditions have gone viral. Could you please oblige us one more time and sing the rendition of your favorite Ram Bhajan?
Of course. रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम सुंदर विग्रह मेघ श्याम गंगा तुलसी शालिग्राम रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम.
All right, Cassandra, thank you very much once again. Thank you for joining us here on this broadcast and enhancing our coverage with that beautiful, soulful rendition of what was also Mahatma Gandhi's most favorite bhajan. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
सियावर रामचंद्र की जय. सियावर रामचंद्र की जय. राम आ गए.
Presented by our
इस दिन के इंतजार में दशकों से ये आंखें तरस गई. आएगा ये तो विश्वास था, अब जो तू यहाँ लौटा है.
स्वागत गान गाए जिसके लिए मन में गंगा जिसके हाथ में है. जीते भी मरते भी काम काज करते भी सुख में दुख में हर एक मुख में गर जाएगी राम. पल पल में युग युग में हर क्षण में राम. हर तन में हर मन में कण कण में राम. पल पल में युग युग में हर क्षण में राम. हर तन में हर मन में कण कण में राम. राम सिया राम बोलो सियावर रामचंद्र की. प्रणाम सिया राम किया विश्व कल्याण. बोलो राम सिया राम सिया राम. प्रणाम सिया राम किया विश्व कल्याण. बोलो राम सिया राम सिया राम. आया खुशियों का दिन सुहाना, लौटा है अपना रामा. अयोध्या फिर से सजा. सुनो हो रहा है ये हल्ला, बैठेंगे राम लल्ला फिर वहाँ. विश्व कल्याण बोलो राम सिया राम सिया राम. हर घर हर दर पे दिया तू जला दे. चल थल सरहद पे भगवा लहरा दे. आया है छाया है मन में समाया है. यहाँ भी वहाँ भी जाए तू जहाँ भी गूंजे. पल पल में युग युग में हर क्षण में राम. हर तन में हर मन में कण कण में राम.